Welcome to the Sisters with Swords podcast, where we explore God's Word and discover His design for women as we wield our weapons of warfare on the battlefield of everyday life. We're your hosts, Holly Knight and Janie Burkett. Hey there, sisters, and welcome to another episode of Sisters with Swords. Well, according to the calendar, it is now officially fall.
That's what the calendars say.
And in the grand state of Texas, that means...
nothing. The temperature does not agree.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It being fall in Texas means zilch.
Nothing.
And, you know, the groundhog came out of his cave or hole, could not find a shadow anywhere for miles. And so I think that means that we have 120 more days of summer. Is that what that means?
I think the groundhog is not about summer, but okay.
I think
we should ask Puxatawny Phil. No, there's very few of our listeners are even going to get that reference.
You think?
I mean, if they're under 35, probably not.
But Groundhog Day is such an epic movie.
I mean, I feel like we should do a poll of who knows about Three Amigos. That was epic too.
That's true. Okay, well, it's fall, and happy fall, y'all.
Mm-hmm. Happy fall, y'all.
Enjoy your summer for the next 3 months.
Yes.
Here in Texas. That is one of the things that I miss about living in the Northeast. So I was recently in Virginia visiting my oldest daughter, Ava, at college. And the leaves were already starting to turn.
Oh, that's magical.
It was cool, crisp, needed a sweatshirt outside.
A light jacket is heavenly.
Yes, it was rainy, misty. It was just so delightful. And then I get on the plane and come back to Dallas, and immediately I'm having to just like strip as soon as I walk outside of the airport because I'm dying, and the boob sweat
really
is just dripping. Yeah, I have that.
That's exciting. That's shocking and exciting.
You
guys,
shocked.
let's all congratulate Holly on her boob sweat.
Are you shocked that I have boob sweat because my boobs are so small?
That's correct.
Yeah. Hey, boob sweat it happens to the least of us and the greatest of us.
Yeah.
And I had it in abundance getting off that airplane back in Dallas. So, you know, it's fall. We're supposed to be doing all the pumpkin spice and the apples and when we lived up in New York, we would go apple picking every fall.
Oh, that's cute.
Oh, it was, we would get our sweaters on and our little boots, and we would go out to Long Island, which is just like very fertile, like farmland and beautiful farms out on Long Island. And this was like an hour from our house in Queens. And so we would go out there, and you could do a tractor ride and you could pick your own apples and put them in a bushel. And then they made fresh apple cider donuts there.
Oh, that does sound delicious.
And then fresh apple cider. And it was just, we would have a day of it every fall. And, you know, here we're still out in the pool.
Do you know also what New York and Virginia have that we don't have?
What?
State income tax.
That's true. And so it is quite cheaper to live here.
So gonna enjoy that 0% state income tax.
0.0%
while I sweat.
That's the forecast.
Right.
That's what the groundhog saw. Puxatawny Phil, whatever. He saw a 0.0% chance of state income tax. And God bless Texas.
Right.
So yeah, that's good. Okay, so we were talking about before we hit record. You and I have had some fun medical experiences.
Right. Just because in general, our family has medical experiences.
I mean, we're just a medical family.
That's true.
Not
in the way that, like, you know, we went to med school.
No.
And it's our profession.
Right.
Just we get to have all of the medical experiences.
We've had all of it. I had a kidney stone in high school, my senior year of high school, which I'll go ahead and say this. What do I care at this point? These ladies all know me. We're all friends. We're all sisters. So my senior year of high school, I had a kidney stone, which, having now delivered 3 babies, well, let me go back to the kidney stone. it was just excruciating pain. Okay. And I had to have a stent put in up through my urethra, which is the hole you pee out of, ladies. Okay?
Your pee hole.
Pee hole. And they broke up, so they did this thing called lithotripsy, which is where they send shockwaves through my body, and it like basically busts up the kidney stone because it was too big for me to pass. And then they put a stent up through your urethra into your bladder.
Your ureter.
Yeah. Urethra, ureter, bladder, whatever. And into your kidney, and it kind of like opens up all the passageways for the fragments of the kidney stone to be passed. This is all well and good. So I had that. I had.
I forgot about this.
I know. I just thought of this one thing that you just remembered too. I forgot about it until just now. So, okay.
We should let them know.
We have to.
You guys should be laughing with us. You don't know it's coming.
It's coming.
But start laughing already.
But what I want to talk, what I'll lead up to that. But so the night before, the first day of my senior year, or the day before, I had the stent removed. Okay, so I had the stent removed, but there was still like a ton of fragments coming out of my urine, I guess you would say. And so, but the night before, and the first week of your senior year, you go on a, Jamie, stop laughing and let me get through this. Okay, she's already crying. Why have we never told
I don't know.
Okay.
And I hope they think it's as great as we did.
I really hope it pays off.
Because you guys might be like, this went way too far.
Yeah, I know.
And you might be disappointed. Also, they're like, just tell us.
Just shut up and get to the punchline. There's a couple punchlines here I'm trying to get to. Okay, the first one is this. I had the catheter removed, and then the first week of my senior year was like a senior retreat where we went up to Estes Park, and we had, we were just out the first week of school at a retreat. Well, the night before I go on this retreat for my senior year, I had just had the catheter removed, and I wet the bed just profusely. I soaked the bed from my urethra being finagled so much. And so I was scared to death to go to this senior retreat because I was like,
I'm going to pee the bed.
I'm going to pee the bed in front of all of my friends. And so I was, which I did not, thank God. But to this day, like, that has not left my mind. You have never met anyone who pees more than me.
Yes. In the middle of the night, you're like on the hour every hour.
But
you have PTSD.
Correct. But even like during the day, getting on an airplane, I will go pee 3 times before I get on an airplane, and then I will walk onto the airplane, and if I'm with Bradley, I will hand him my luggage and say, go put this up, and I will stop in the bathroom by the cockpit of the airplane and go to the bathroom again before going and getting back on my seat.
Holly, you have a mental illness.
I really do.
Have you talked about this in therapy?
I have not, and I might need to.
If there's any, hey, this is your chance to get some free therapy.
Or I don't know.
If there's any therapists listening right now, if you could send Holly, or couch therapists.
Or urine therapist, urine therapy.
Yeah, you guys send Holly your medical diagnosis.
Urethra therapy, urethra psychology. I need that. And so to this day, you've never met anyone that pees more than me. I'm constantly just because I'm scared to death. I'm going to wet myself again. So that happened. So that is just in me for the rest of my life. Like I've got issues. But then I get back from the retreat and have another doctor's appointment, and it was determined that they still needed like 24 to 48 hours worth of my urine. And so I had to go to school my senior year with a 2-gallon bright orange medical jug.
And you had to pee it in.
And every time I had to go pee, I had to pee.
Which was a lot.
I had to pee into that jug. Now here's what I did. I took it to the front office of the school, and Miss Penny Glover.
Miss Penny had it.
She was the best. I was like, Miss Penny, I have to pee into this. Can I keep this behind your desk? Yes, baby, of course you can.
Miss Penny, will you keep my pee?
Will you keep my urine? And so for the first week of my senior year of high school, at school, I carried around a large, bright orange 2-gallon urine container, and I peed into it. And that's where I peaked. It was all downhill from there. But that was after I had wet the bed. And so I'm going to start a GoFundMe.
Just imagine.
If you guys want to donate to my urine therapy.
She needs it.
I do.
This is a worthy cause, friends.
Tax deductible.
Yeah. We recently had North Texas Giving Day.
Yeah.
We should.
We'll double. We have a matching
donor.
So that's one of my medical things. But Janie, okay. And then I said I had 3 pregnancies. I gave birth to 3 kids, and the kidney stone was hands down more traumatic than giving birth. But also, I passed kidney stones while I was pregnant. I had kidney stones while I was pregnant and passed them while I was 8 months pregnant with 2 of my pregnancies. So there's that. Okay, your turn, Janie.
Okay, well, we'll make this short because you guys are like, get to the lesson for the love, and we will.
Are they? I think they like this.
But who knows? Maybe that's just me. Okay. But, so I always had, starting with my second pregnancy, I just had a thing called pyelonephritis. It's where you have just kidney issues when you're pregnant or shortly after being pregnant. And I won't tell you all of the medical things that went through with that. But the last pregnancy, after I got pregnant, after I gave birth, I also got kidney stones. And I had always prided myself. Everybody in my family had kidney stones, like, all the time. Like, also our little brother had them when he was 12.
Yep.
He was like, he made the news, like, youngest kid ever to have kidney stones. And I never had them. So I'm like, what's wrong with y'all's ugly kidneys? You know, like, so I always had great kidneys until I got pregnant, of course. And then, so I had this kidney stone. So I also went and had the surgery to, like, bust it up.
The
and
lithotripsy,
they
with
put
the
the stent in. Well, this was like, literally, I had to schedule this around Holly's 40th birthday.
My 40th birthday.
Because heaven forbid I, have a surgery right up on her birthday. So I had the surgery a day or two before your birthday party, and then was having the stent removed a few days after. So it was like a week. Well, when they put the stent in, we didn't know this till the end, but it essentially lodged into the wall of my kidney. So it hurt all the time. I was in, they couldn't get my pain down in post-op. And I was admitted and stayed overnight in the hospital for what was supposed to be an outpatient surgery because it hurt so bad. And they couldn't figure out why it was so bad. Well, then when we went and took the stent out, we figured out why. So Holly came with me to take the stent out.
Because I'm so good and so supportive.
Right. And, they were like, somebody should drive you home. First of all, anytime somebody says maybe you should get driven home, that means it's about to hurt.
It's about to go down.
They try not to tell you it's going to hurt, but it's going to hurt. If you need somebody else to drive you, it's going to hurt. So Holly drives me to my appointment to take this out. And of course, they just use local anesthetic to put in your catheter, and then they put a camera up there to see where it is, and they pull it out. It should be about 3 seconds long.
Yeah.
Well, they are up there spelunking, trying to get this thing out. And of course, I'm not looking at it, but Holly can see.
They're digging for gold.
Holly can see on their camera that this thing is lodged into.
They're archaeologists.
Yes. That this thing is lodged into the wall of my bladder, and they cannot get it out. And now, remember, they just put the local anesthesia just on your little hole so that it doesn't hurt with the catheter thingy going in. But there's no anesthesia on the wall of
you're wide awake.
Yes, wide awake.
With your feet up in stirrups, which is the most vulnerable place you can be on earth.
Yes, feet in stirrups. Just the worst.
Laid back, just.
So At any rate,
pie
it
to
is,
the sky.
it is hurting so bad. And Holly's like passing out watching this.
No, for real.
And so after it gets done, and it's like, it's really still not that long. It might be like 2 minutes?
It felt like an hour.
But it was the worst. And so at the end, the nurse looks at me and she goes, "Are you okay? Do you need juice or crackers?" And Holly goes, "Yes, that would be very helpful. Thank you."
I was like, I need some juice, my blood sugar.
And some crackers.
I-
and the nurse goes,
No, and I said, I know this is funny, but I really am about to pass out here watching her go through that. I really am.
So then when it's time to go home, it's like, okay, who drives?
I couldn't. I was like, I don't think I can even stand up and walk.
I think I ended up driving.
Because I was in such turmoil watching you go through this pain. I saw myself in the mirror. I was completely white. My lips had lost all color. I literally thought I was about to hit the floor, passing out. And I'm sitting there going, could I get some juice? And the nurse was looking at me like,
no.
Shut up. Who are you? Why are you even here? And I'm like, I'm not okay. Do you guys have...
I'm not okay.
Do you guys have a nutrition center here? You know, because they have that at the hospitals. On the hospital floors, they have that little cubby that says nutrition, and you can get graham crackers and apple juice and pudding there.
Yeah.
We know about hospital floors.
Right.
And so I'm like, where's the nutrition center? And they didn't have one.
No.
And it was up to me to muscle through Janie's pain.
Well, you did it, Holly.
Thank you.
Great job.
We could do a whole 2 hours about our medical stuff. There's so
much.
So much
Maybe
more.
we'll just start sprinkling it in.
Maybe we will. I don't know why we haven't thought to do that sooner, because
how have we not talked about your jug of pee in high school?
My senior year jug of urine.
This is the longest intro ever.
No, it's not. It's fine.
Okay, great.
Everyone loves this. Okay. They do. They really do. And if they don't, they won't tell us.
No.
We like us, and so should you.
Remember, first podcast idea.
That was the first podcast we were ever going to do. It was going to be called We Like Us, and so should you. And you should too, or whatever it was. So we think we're funny. Okay. What we're talking about today, though, ladies, not funny. Let's transition, shall we? And here's what I want to do. In all seriousness, before we get into this lesson, I do want to say this is a very adult content today. Mm-hmm. So if you have children in the car and you're listening to this,
they've already heard pee hole.
They've already heard pee hole in urethra, so God bless them. And there's a biology lesson for you. You're welcome.
Yeah.
But I would not recommend listening to this with children in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I do want to give, I hate the phrase trigger warning, but I am going to give a trigger warning. We are going to be talking about sexual assault, sexual abuse, and rape today, in today's lesson. And so I want to put that out there at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So everybody has been warned, no little ears for this. And I know this because I know my own friend group, and just a straw poll from our friend group tells me at least 25 to 30%, maybe even higher, of women have experienced some sort of sexual abuse, sexual trauma, and sexual harassment. When you include sexual harassment, we're probably looking at 75, 80% now. So I want to deal very tenderly with this, just knowing based on our friend group, if we're, kind of a snapshot of our larger audience, many of you will have dealt with that. And so I just wanted to let you know that is the topic that we're going to be talking about that today. We are still learning about David's wives. The first wife that we learned about was Michal, and then last week was Abigail. And this week, we are learning about Bathsheba. And so just a couple things before we move into this lesson I want to touch. At this point in Israel's history, David has been king for 12 years. So the Ark of the Covenant has been brought back to Jerusalem. He has been king. He replaced Saul as king, and we remember Samuel anointed him. And while he was fleeing for his life from Saul, he has accumulated wives, including Michal and Abigail. There's another one that was mentioned last week, Ahinoam. And then there were 4 others. So at this point, he has 7 wives. And before we start reading the Bible, and I did this when I taught this lesson at our Bible study a few months ago. I asked the ladies, I said, I want to go around and I want you to tell me what you have been taught about Bathsheba. And Janie, you can help me remember some of the things that were said.
It seemed that she was, the thing I always says, but she was a hoe.
Yeah, yeah.
That she was promiscuous or seductive.
Yep.
She would flaunt herself.
Yep.
Those types of things.
She was a temptress.
Yes.
She was immodest. She was seductive. Just like all of these things is what we have been taught about Bathsheba, including me.
She was asking for it.
Yes. All of these types of things. And so what I want to do, and we have not been taught these things by accident, is what I want to say. And so what I want to do is I'm going to do 2 things here. First of all, Janie, I'm going to have you read 2 Samuel 11, verses 1 through 5. So just 5 quick verses. And then I brought with me one of my commentary books that I want to read to you. And we're just going to compare what the Bible says with what a very well-known commentary has to say, and just kind of go from there.
Okay.
Okay?
Here's 2 Samuel 11, 1 through 5. In the spring, when kings march out to war, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and strolled around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing, a very beautiful woman. So David sent someone to inquire about her, and he said, "Isn't this Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam and wife of Uriah the Hittite?" David sent messengers to get her, and when she came to him, he slept with her. Now she had been purifying herself from her uncleanness. Afterward, she returned home. The woman conceived and sent word to inform David, "I am pregnant." Okay.
We heard Janie read the account from the Bible, word for word, very black and white, very succinct. Okay? Now, I am reading from, because I want to give credit to where credit is due. This is called All the Women of the Bible, and this has been, for the most part, a very good resource for me in teaching about women from the Bible, and this is by Herbert Lockyer. But when I got to the commentary on Bathsheba, well, you'll hear it for yourself. So let me just, I'm not gonna read the whole thing because it's 3 pages, but I've got some paragraphs and some sentences here highlighted that I want to read. Lazing around on the flat roof of his palace, David saw a woman on the roof of a nearby house undressing and bathing herself. His passions were excited. Bathsheba, the woman exposing herself nudely, was very beautiful to look upon, and David, ever attracted by lovely women, coveted her and became guilty of an outrageous disgrace. Although David was to confess that his foul sin was his and his alone, one wonders how far Bathsheba was the accomplice in such a sin, as well as its provocation. Had she been a careful, modest woman, surely she would have looked around and easily seen adjacent roofs. And if others had been looking her way, she would have been more appropriately modest in bathing herself. Further, when sent for by David, had she been a true wife and a woman of principle, she should have refused to obey the king's summons. As she saw David feasting his eyes upon her, did she have a presentiment of what would happen? If not, then when before the king, she should have bravely refused to yield to adultery. After the adulterous act in the king's bedchamber, Bathsheba manifested no sense of guilt. But after her husband's murder, almost immediately went to the palace to supplement David's many wives. Bathsheba only added insult to the injury by indulging in her illicit affair with another man while her lawful husband was risking his life in the service of her seducer. And then this, just a couple sentences here, it says, was Bathsheba made conscious of her share in the iniquitous transaction? That she was co-responsible in David's sin. Did she cry tears of repentance? Okay. So what we read, Jane, you read it again.
In the spring, when kings march out to war, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and strolled around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. So she was bathing, and then he was on the roof. A very beautiful woman. So David sent someone to inquire about her, and he said, "Isn't this Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam and wife of Uriah the Hittite?" David sent messengers to get her. And when she came to him, he slept with her. Now she had been purifying herself from her uncleanness. Afterward, she returned home. The woman conceived and sent word to inform David, "I am pregnant."
That commentary is outrageous to me in light of what the text actually says. So let's go through this text. These 5 verses here. What this commentary is suggesting is exactly what we've always been taught.
Yes.
And again, like I say, for good reason, because we have commentaries like this that teach us this. And it says she knew what she was doing when she went out there to bathe. She was provocative. She was naked. She was undressing. She probably saw David sitting there watching her and seduced him. And
she didn't look around to see if someone was up there first.
How could she not look around to see if anybody was up there? And so she had to have known that he was there watching her. And then when he called her in, she went in. She should not have gone in, but she went in to see him anyways. She should have said no. And when he proposed sex to her, she should have turned him down. And so she is complicit in all of this, okay? That is what this Bible commentary says. So now let's go through again, verse by verse, and see what this actually says. Verse 1, in the spring is where it starts, in the spring. So most battles in this day were temporarily halted during the winter months due to the perilous weather, a lot of rain, and the difficult conditions of the ground. So if there was battle happening, once it was winter, they called off the battle, everyone went home, hunkered down. When the spring came, it was time to return back to battle. And that's exactly what happened. But David stayed behind in Jerusalem instead of joining his men. There's problem number 1. When we have gone back and looked at David's life in battle, especially as it pertained to when Saul was king, every time David led the men into battle, they had huge victories. They were given the victory every time David led his men into battle. But he did not go into battle this time. He did not lead his men into battle. So at this point, he must have been exhausted from battlefield and content to rest on his laurels. So we've been so great in battle, I don't have to go out anymore. I can hang out behind. But Israel was most successful when David was on the field. So he stayed behind. Verse 2, it says, one evening David got up from his bed and strolled around on the roof of the palace. The Midrash, which is an ancient Jewish sacred text, suggests that when David got up from his bed, he was most likely finishing up having sex with one of his wives or concubines. So he had, according to Jewish tradition, had just finished having sex with one of his many wives and even more concubines, okay? And then he got up and he went to take just a leisurely stroll out on the patio, okay? And he sees Bathsheba bathing, and she was very beautiful. Very beautiful. The Bible only uses the two words very beautiful together 4 times. We'll remember last week Abigail was called very beautiful. And now Bathsheba is called very beautiful. And so let's talk about, was Bathsheba wrong for bathing on the roof of her house?
I mean, this is one that I was always taught, that like, why was she bathing on the roof?
Why was she on the roof?
Right. Like, couldn't she have bathed in her half bath?
Why isn't she in the master bathroom?
Correct.
Okay, well, first of all, that's where baths were back in this day. But we'll get there in a second. We're told here in the text in verse 4 that she was purifying herself from her uncleanness. What does that mean? She was performing a ritual cleansing required of women after they finished their monthly periods. So, because the blood was considered an impure thing at that time, and so when women bleed every month, they did a purification ritual, a bathing ritual after their period every month, to cleanse themselves.
Which, by the way, was prescribed to them by law in Leviticus.
Right.
So Bathsheba's following the law?
Bathsheba's keeping the law here. Okay. So she's keeping the law. The Bible nowhere says that she's naked. It never says she was unclothed. It never said she was naked. It just says she was bathing. Have you ever heard that before? The words we all assume, because of our Western mindset, modern day mindset, that to bathe means you are naked in a bath.
In a bathtub, yeah.
That's not what bathing always meant back then. I don't even know if they had bathtubs, to be honest with you. The Bible doesn't say she was in a tub. It doesn't say she was naked. It doesn't say she was undressed. She could have had her ritual cleansing cloths or whatever she needed just up under her dress or her robe, cleansing herself, bathing herself, purifying herself. She was doing what was required of her by law, and nowhere does it say she's naked. Now, she could have been naked. Absolutely. And that would have been within her right as a woman to bathe. I have the right to bathe naked, okay? But we're not told that she was naked. So this took place also during the evening, which was under the cover of some darkness. She wasn't doing this in broad daylight.
Right.
It says, one evening David got up from his bed. It was nighttime. She was not doing this in the broad daylight, in the sunshine of the day. Not happening. She waited till it was evening time, okay? But again, let's say she was naked. Let's say she was going to get in like a full bathtub. Where else is she supposed to bathe other than if the bathtub is on a roof? Like, that's where my bath is. Where else am I supposed to go bathe?
Right.
If that's where my bath is. Where else was she supposed to go? That's where she bathed. That's where she bathed. Most of the men were away at battle at this time, including her husband, and David should have been. To our knowledge, the text doesn't say, but Bathsheba didn't know David was not at battle. Bathsheba didn't know David was in the palace. As far as she knew, all the men were away fighting. And she had every right to bathe either in her bath or a trough or whatever it was on the roof, because that's where it happened. There were no other options for bathing. That's where it happened. So this commentary, and there are many others like it, y'all can miss me with that stuff, saying that she was seducing him. She didn't even know he was there.
Right.
He wasn't supposed
And he
to
wasn't
be
supposed to be there.
in the palace. No men were around. She was obeying the law with her ritual cleansing after her period.
And doing it at nighttime when it's the least likely that she would have been seen.
Under the cover of darkness. Y'all can miss me with telling me that she was seducing David.
Yeah.
There is nothing in the text that points to that. Okay, so then David sees her. He thinks she's very beautiful. So he sends his servants to inquire about her. But the servant said, "Isn't this Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam and wife of Uriah the Hittite?" Both of these men, both Bathsheba's father and her husband, were loyal soldiers in David's army, whom David depended on greatly. This report from the servant should have ended David's conquest with her. Like, you just learned all you need to know about who this woman is.
Stick your pee-pee somewhere else.
Go find one of your other concubines or one of your wives and have at it. This woman is off limits. Not only is she married to Uriah, who is one of David's mighty men, but her father was one of David's mighty men. Like, these men were loyal to the death to David. Find somebody else, David. But he didn't. So in verse 4, it says, David sent his messengers to get her. The King James Version has much stronger language. It says, and David sent messengers and they took her. She was taken. So when this commentary says she should have said no, honey, she was taken by messengers
Of the king.
of the king. Not only that, but Jewish tradition says that Bathsheba was most likely at least 20 years younger than David at this point. And because she did not have children yet, she was probably very young, like teenager young. And you've got a king sending messengers to take you to see the king, that you didn't even know was at the palace. Oh, what? The king's at the palace? Who knew? Thought he was at war with my husband.
Right.
What does he want from me? Is my husband okay?
Right.
That would have been the first thing that entered my mind. Oh my goodness, is my husband okay?
Right.
I'm not going to say no to that. My husband's at war.
They must be calling me to the palace to tell me something about my husband.
Yes. My husband's at war. Supposedly with this king, but now this king is here and he wants to speak with me? Okay, I got to go. I got to find out what's going on. She can't say no to that. She cannot say no to that. So then she's now in the presence of the king in his bedchamber, and he's saying, hey, I want to have sex with you. You have this young woman, possibly teenager, who is in the bedroom of the king, and he's saying he wants to have sex with you. He's the king. You're a lowly woman. The power differential here.
And you don't know where your husband is or when he's going to be back.
Right. You're by yourself, totally alone, no protection. The power differential here is monumental, is extreme. How in the world would this woman be able to say, I'm not having sex with you? And I'm sure she was blindsided. I mean, putting myself in her shoes, she's probably going in there to find out news about her husband or something, because why else would this king be calling me to see him? And I go in there and, oh my gosh, you want to have sex with me? Mm-hmm. That has to be a shock. So she has to be in shock in some way. Not able to say no because he's the king and you don't tell the king no. Or thinking that if she does say no, it might put her husband's life in jeopardy of some sort. Like, I've got to keep this king happy because my husband fights for him. And I don't want anything to happen to my husband. I've got to do what I have to do. Like, there's just so many angles to this as to why this woman did not or could not say no. She couldn't say no. And so she didn't say no. And as we read here in this commentary, it must mean, well, it was complicit. Mm-hmm. No. Just because you don't feel like you can say no does not mean that it's a yes.
Right.
It does not mean I'm complicit. I comply.
Right.
I consent. That is absolutely not what this means. Women had zero autonomy during this time. They were considered the property of men. When was she ever in her life allowed to use her voice to say no to a man? Mm-hmm. Probably never. And now here she is with the king. She's not going to start saying no now. She doesn't know how to do that, probably. But there is absolutely zero evidence in the text that Bathsheba gave consent, participated in, or enjoyed this sexual encounter. There was one commentary I read, and I couldn't find it this morning. I wanted to bring it over here for this, but said that she enjoyed it, that they had the time of their lives together, and then David had to go kill Uriah. Mm-hmm. Where do you see that?
Yeah.
In verses 1 through 5, sir? It's unbelievable to me, the things that have been read into these 5 verses here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the blame that has been put on Bathsheba historically.
Yeah.
Is shocking to me. Mm-hmm. When you just read the verses. It's like, where is this coming from? Mm-hmm. The definition of rape is any sexual activity with or without penetration that takes place without the consent of one of the people involved. According to this definition, we can say Bathsheba was raped by David. There was no consent given in the text. There was no, what's the word I'm looking for? Cooperation on her part. Mm-hmm. Other than she came when she was taken. Mm-hmm. She was taken. And she came to see the king because she was taken. There's no participation there on her part. No consent. No enjoyment whatsoever. At the end of verse 4, it says, afterwards she returned home. And that to me has to be one of the saddest verses in the Bible. Knowing what this young woman just went through. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, you're free to go. She is alone without her husband. Mm-hmm. She was just brought in to see the king, blindsided, raped, taken advantage of, and then sent back home. And afterwards, she returned home. And just to keep living, David got what he wanted. David got what he wanted from her, and had no use of her anymore. Because he had a house full of concubines. He had a house full of wives.
Yeah.
So what must she have been feeling on that walk home? Shame, pain, rejection, guilt, remorse, sadness, despair, loneliness. All of those things. Thinking about what she could have done differently, how she could have done things differently, what fault of it was hers, which, as we now know, was none. And then verse 5 says, she conceived and sent word to inform David, I am pregnant. So now she is home, still without her husband, who is at war, and she finds out she's pregnant. Was more than likely her first pregnancy. So there's that. When it's your first pregnancy, good Lord, all the questions. Everything is new. Everything is frightening. Your body is changing. You don't understand what's going on with you. We don't know if she had her mother around or any sort of an older woman around to help her and to comfort her. But her husband certainly wasn't at home. So she has to send word to David that she is pregnant with his child. And it, of course, is his child because her husband's at war. So we're not going to read the rest of chapter 11. I'm just going to paraphrase it for you guys so we can move on with the story. But David finds out, obviously, that Bathsheba is pregnant. Well, the remedy to that is we got to bring Uriah home from the battlefield and let him have sex with his wife. So
he'll think it's his.
It can be, thought of as Uriah's. Well, so David does that. He summons Uriah from the battlefield and says, you need to go home to your wife. But Uriah doesn't go home to his wife and sleep with her. He sleeps on the doorsteps of the king's palace along with the other servants. And he says, look, all of these men out on the battlefield, they're sleeping in tents or they're sleeping out on the ground underneath the stars. They're in battle day and night. I can't come here and go be in a bed with my wife and be comforted by my wife while all of these men on the battlefield are suffering. I can't do it. He was such a man of honor. And so then David had to come up with another plan. Okay, well, I guess let me just get you drunk now. Let me have a feast for you, get you drunk, and then send you home to your wife. Well, David does that. He gets Uriah drunk, but Uriah still does not go home to his wife. Even drunk, he has honor. And so that plan failed. So then David sends Uriah back to the battlefield, and he sends a message to the leader of his army, and he said, look, put David on the front line. Put Uriah on the front line of the battlefield. We're going to press against the enemy. We're going to attack. And then at the last minute, you're going to have everybody else withdraw, but we're going to leave Uriah out there a sitting duck and have the enemy slaughter him. And that's what happened. David set up the murder of Uriah to have him killed. And you think about that man who is so honorable, who fought with his whole life for David. If he was honorable for David in battle like that, he had to have been honorable to his wife. Surely he loved her. Doing what he was supposed to. Surely he wanted to go be with his wife when he was back from battle, but he didn't. And he was sent to the front lines, and the entire army retreated and left him out there to die, just to be slaughtered by the enemy. What a horrible death. What an unnecessary death. And so now Bathsheba is a widow. So Janie, if you will read just verses 26 and 27 of chapter 11.
When Uriah's wife heard that her husband Uriah had died, she mourned for him. When the time of mourning had ended, David brought her to his house. She became his wife and bore him a son. However, the Lord considered what David had done to be evil.
Okay, so now Bathsheba is a widow. Like I said, she's pregnant with King David's child, and her mourning must have been thorough. because in the back of her mind, I am sure she's blaming herself for this, for the death of Uriah, saying this was all my fault because of what I did with David, that David had to kill him. And now I'm pregnant. I don't know if they knew how biology worked back then, like how the baby was made and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what they knew, but I'm assuming she thought she might have taken the blame on herself for all of this. And so her mourning was very deep and complete and thorough. And in verse 27 here, it says, when the time of mourning ended, David had her brought to his house. Again, in the King James Version, it says, David took her or had her taken to his house. So again, we see him taking her, doing what he will with her. But he did save her from the pain of being an unwed mother. He did marry her. He did, at this point, do the right thing by her. But did she welcome this marriage?
Right.
Did she want to be married to him? Was she happy about this? We're not told her feelings. We don't know how she feels about this. But we do know that from a material standpoint, David was going to be taking care of her. And at that, and in this culture, that was, the most she could ask for. That was all she could ask for. But it says at the end of this verse, the Lord considered what David had done to be evil. What David had done. We do not see Bathsheba's name mentioned there.
Right.
If Bathsheba was complicit in any sort of sin or evil, we would have seen her name mentioned there. But David is the only one that we see right there mentioned. The Lord considered what David had done to be evil. David and David alone was responsible for this sin. Okay, Janie, now read the next chapter, 2 Samuel chapter 12, verses 1 through 4.
So the Lord sent Nathan to David. When he arrived, he said to him, there were two men in a certain city, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very large flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing except one small ewe lamb that he had bought. He raised her, and she grew up with him and with his children. From his meager food she would eat, from his cup she would drink, and in his arms she would sleep. She was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man would not bring himself to take one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for his guest. Is that all?
Yeah, through verse 4. Yes. Well, and then it said David was, I'll read the next couple verses. It says, David was infuriated with the man and said to Nathan, as the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die. Because he has done this thing and shown no pity, he must pay 4 lambs for that lamb. But Nathan replied to David, you are the man. You are the evil man in this story. This is what the Lord God of Israel says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I rescued you from Saul. I gave your master's house to you and your master's wives into your arm, and I gave you the house of Israel and Judah. And if that was not enough, I would have given you even more. Why then have you despised the Lord's command by doing what I considered evil? You struck down Uriah and you took his wife as your own. You took her. Again, we see that language. You took her. So the word of the Lord through the prophet Nathan is very severe here for David. Very severe. But what I want to point out to you here with regards to Bathsheba is that in this story, with the man and the lambs and the little baby ewe, Bathsheba is the little lamb, the little baby lamb, which in this day and age was a symbol of innocence and purity to the Jews. That's why Jesus was called the Lamb of God. He was the perfect, innocent lamb. That's why they sacrificed lambs at the temple and the tabernacle for atonement. Like, the lambs were symbols of purity. So Nathan here is even confirming Bathsheba's purity in all of this. She was not complicit. She did not participate.
She was the lamb.
She was the lamb who was taken, and then, quote unquote, slaughtered by David. She was blameless in this affair, both according to the prophet Nathan and according to the Lord. So Bathsheba gives birth to a son, but the Lord strikes him dead at 7 days old. So now her husband is dead, her baby is dead, and she is wife number 8 to David. So Janie, if you would read verses 24 through 25 of this same chapter.
Then David comforted his wife Bathsheba. He went to her and slept with her. She gave birth to a son and named him Solomon. The Lord loved him, and he sent a message through the prophet named Nathan, who named him Jedediah, because of the Lord.
So their first son is dead. God took their first son that they had as punishment, not on Bathsheba, although she does bear the consequences of David's sin here. But this was punishment on David, for sure. But he was the one who had sinned against the Lord. But it says here that David went to her and comforted her and slept with her. This is where we see a shift here. Instead of David taking her, now he's going to her and comforting her. And there must have been some love between them in order for her to find comfort in David, because she was comforted by him and there was sex involved. And so we have to assume that there was some love there on her part towards him and on his part towards her. And this union produced Solomon, which means beloved of the Lord, whom Bathsheba would raise to become a great king of Israel. So we see this whole story in 1 Kings, which we're not going to read at all because it is very long. But in 1 Kings chapter 1, another one of David's sons had taken the throne. David is sick. He's on his deathbed. Another one of his sons, Adonijah, was bidding for the power, and he wanted to have the throne. And Bathsheba goes into David, and her and the prophet Nathan get together. They go into David, and Bathsheba really encourages David, you need to anoint Solomon as king before you die. Otherwise, it's going to get really ugly with your sons. And David did just that. He anointed Solomon as king. And in 1 Kings 2, chapter 19, it said, so Bathsheba went to King Solomon. This was after he was anointed king, to speak to him about Adonijah. The king stood up to greet her, bowed to her, sat on his throne, and had a throne placed for the king's mother. So she sat down at his right hand. So now we see here Bathsheba almost being coronated as the queen mother. She was helping Solomon with his reign over Israel. She was called the queen. She was very influential in his life. She gave him sound counsel, sound wisdom, sound advice, and he listened to her. And not only that, he expected all of Israel to listen to her, and he symbolizes that by placing her on a throne at his right hand. That is a place of authority. That is a place of power. We know that Jesus sits at the right hand of God the Father in heaven. That is because Jesus has power and authority, and that's what he's symbolizing here with placing Bathsheba to his right on a throne. This woman has power. This woman has authority. We will listen to her. And so after all that she's been through in her early years with David, how she was taken advantage of, how she was sexually assaulted, raped, her husband was murdered. Her son that came through that union honors her and gives her a place of honor, gives her a place of respect, gives her a place of power. Where she was powerless with David, her son now gives her a place of power. Where she was dishonored with David, her son is now giving her a place of honor. Where she had no voice with David, her son is now saying the entire kingdom will listen to your voice. So there was so much there about her life and her story that was restored through the son that she had with David. And here's what's really interesting that I don't think a lot of people know. Janie, if you will go there. We have the book of Proverbs, which most of it is accredited to Solomon. It's his book of wisdom, his proverbial wisdom. And we're going to stop. We're going to start right there.
Right.
Us women in Christianity and evangelicalism, we have been given this picture of what a godly woman, a godly wife looks like. And you guys all are going to know it as soon as I say it. It's the Proverbs 31 woman. Mm-hmm. How many times have we been said, well, we got to be the Proverbs 31 woman.
Got to look like this, girls.
This is what we're all supposed to look like. Okay, and yes, and I agree, because
it's in the Bible.
The Proverbs 31 woman is bad to the bone. Mm-hmm. And when you actually study the Proverbs 31 woman, you want to be the Proverbs 31 woman. Mm-hmm. So no problem there. But if we read the beginning, at the header of Proverbs 31, what does it say?
My header says it's the words of Lemuel, the words of King Lemuel, a pronouncement that his mother taught him.
Who is King Lemuel, Janie?
Well, I know from our Bible study that Lemuel was another name or a nickname for Solomon.
For Solomon. So this is a pronouncement that his mother taught him. So essentially, Proverbs 31 was written by Bathsheba.
And it's about
Bathsheba. It is about Bathsheba.
The slut.
The slut. The whore. Who was the promiscuous woman who was bathing on the roof and seducing King David.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I just think is so... Listen, I think that women should dress modestly. Holly, your shoulders are a little scandalous today.
Thank you.
No, I do think women should dress modestly. And Lord knows, can we talk about the swimsuits that some of these high school girls are calling homecoming dresses? I mean, they look like a 1940s swimsuit. They're so little. Anyways, but... Ephesians 5:10 says, find out what pleases the Lord. I think we should be cognizant of what pleases the Lord. But this idea that I need to dress a certain way so as not to tempt another man is not it. And I feel like literally that was taught to us. I remember in high school, in chapels, and certainly in youth group, being taught, this is why, ladies, you have to dress modestly because of Bathsheba.
Yeah.
Literally because of Bathsheba, ladies. It's you don't want to be responsible for a man's sin. You are not responsible for anyone else's sin.
No.
You are responsible for your own sin. And again, that doesn't give us license to be walking around Costco in a bikini. I don't think that's necessarily appropriate. But if we did, that would not make us responsible for being raped or sexually assaulted or touched. That's not the same thing.
No.
We cannot use this as a license to say, women, you're responsible for your own assault. My God.
Yes.
Help us we have taught our women that and our girls that, and not only taught them that from society, but worse, we've taught them that from the church.
Yeah. In church.
That's literally spiritual abuse.
I think it's taught in the church more than it is in society.
Well, of course, yeah.
Because you hear of sexual assault in the church, sexual abuse, rape, whatever, and it's like, well, what was she wearing? Well,
right.
what was she? Did she seduce him?
What was she wearing? What did she do?
What? It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. And again, if you ask me, if you want to take it back to Genesis 3:15, this is another woman against the serpent. Mm-hmm. It's another attack on womanhood. Because we are deliverers. And so when women are abused, raped, assaulted in any way, and then made to feel guilty about that or complicit, or what was your part in this, that is woman against the serpent every time. Because Bathsheba was completely innocent in all of this, as we have seen in the text.
So let me read to you the pronouncement that Lemuel's mother taught him. His mother who was the queen, his mother who was the overcomer, his mother who had overcome abuse and trauma and who had been a victim. Let me now read you what she, the queen, this woman of strength, this pillar of strength, this godly woman who wanted to follow the letter of the law. Let me read you the pronouncement that Lemuel's mother, Queen Bathsheba, taught him. Who can find a wife of noble character? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will lack no good thing. She rewards him with good, not evil, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from far away. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and portions for her female servants. She evaluates a field and buys it. She plants a vineyard with all of her earnings and profits. She draws on her strength and reveals that her arms are strong. She sees that her profits are good and her lamp never goes out at night. She extends her hands to the spinning staff and her hands hold the spindle. Her hands reach out to the poor. She extends her hands to the needy. She is not afraid for her household when it snows, for all in her household are doubly clothed. She makes her own bed coverings. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known at the city gates, where he sits among the elders of the land. She makes and sells linen garments. She delivers belts to the merchants, and strength and honor are her clothing, and she can laugh at the time to come. Her mouth speaks wisdom, and loving instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the activities of her household and is never idle. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also praises her. Many women have done noble deeds, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord will be praised. Give her the reward of her labor and let her works praise her in the city gates.
This is Bathsheba who wrote this, who had been taken from the safety of her home at a young age, who had been raped, who had been impregnated, who had had her husband murdered, who had lost a child, who had seen abuse, who had seen assault, who was not a stranger to being used and abused and then dumped. And this is what she is telling her son Solomon. This is the woman to look for. It hits different. It hits different when you know what this woman has been through.
And how she had every reason to have a root of bitterness like Michael had.
Yeah.
But instead, she clearly chose forgiveness. And she clearly chose to put her trust in Yahweh and to be a daughter of Yahweh and to follow his plan and path for her instead of the bitterness that she could have chosen.
And I think in a way she became an advocate. Mm-hmm. And here's why. Because if you back up, this is still Proverbs 31, and this is still Bathsheba's words. But if you back up just a couple verses to verse 8 and 9, it says, "Speak up for those who have no voice, for the justice of all who are dispossessed. Speak up, judge righteously, and defend the cause of the oppressed and needy." This woman had no one to speak up for her. Her husband was gone. We don't know where other family was. Her dad, if he was alive, presumably at war still. Who knows about where her mother was or any women. But at this time, it was for the men to speak up. Women didn't have the voice to speak up. So she is telling her son, speak up for those who have no voice, for the justice of all who are dispossessed. This is on you. You have power. You have authority. You have control of this kingdom. You better use it for good, Solomon. You better speak up for those who are dispossessed and are oppressed and needy. You better defend them. Because the person who was supposed to do that for me, the king who was supposed to do that for me, abused me, assaulted me, and then sent me home. And then when I got pregnant, killed my husband.
And then all the seminary professors called me a slut.
Right. And then for the next 2,000 years, I'm going to get called a slut and a harlot who's bathing on a roof. I mean, there are going to be some people that owe that woman an apology when we get to heaven. Because that woman's name has been dragged through the mud. Dragged through the mud.
And you know, we all know Solomon as the wisest person who ever lived, right?
Right.
Well, David had many sons. And one of them ended up raping his daughter. And then a different son, of course, was very pissed off about that and then ended up murdering that son. Okay, so David wasn't necessarily a number one. So what was different about Solomon? His mother. Okay, so
David's kids didn't turn out all that great.
Right. But one of them had a different mother. Okay, and his mother is what made the difference. His mother is the one who helped form him into one of the wisest that ever lived the earth. That one of the richest man to ever live the earth. And so, that's who his mother raised. And
oh yeah, for sure. David wasn't raising him. He look at all those wives and those concubines and all those children. You think David was involved?
Right.
He busy.
So, it's just so interesting that the same people that tell us women to go
be a Proverbs
31 woman want to call the Proverbs 31 woman a slut.
The actual Proverbs 31 woman was a slut bathing on the roof.
The OG.
It's insane to me.
Yes.
What does God think of Bathsheba, though? Because she's mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus. In the book of Matthew, chapter 1, there are 4 women that are mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus. We have Rahab, Ruth, we have Tamar, and we have Bathsheba. Bathsheba, however, is not mentioned by name. It says David fathered Solomon by Uriah's wife. And I think God put her in there as Uriah's wife, as a way of saying, I remember what happened to you, Bathsheba. I remember who you were before that was taken from you and you were taken. I remember who you were. You were Uriah's wife. And the Lord remembered Bathsheba. He remembered her, and then we got to see through the end of her life, through her son, she was restored. She was remembered and restored. She was given a throne of honor next to her son. She's been memorialized forever through Proverbs 31, although she doesn't get the credit for it a lot of time. And she's in the genealogy of Jesus, one of only 4 women, and she's mentioned as Uriah's wife, and I think that's because God says, I remember. I remember what happened to you. I haven't forgotten. And so this has been a very tender lesson, ladies. And first of all, if you are in a situation, in a relationship where you are being assaulted, abused in any way please get help. Seek professional help. Let somebody know. But also, God has his eye on you.
Mm-hmm.
He has his eye on you. You are remembered, and he can and will restore you to a place of honor, a place of respect, a place of dignity, a place of authority. That's who we are called to be through Christ Jesus. We're a kingdom of priests. So we have authority. We have, there is respect there that you deserve. And so it's a tender subject. I know that. And, but I wanted to vindicate the 2,000 years of, in my view, very poor teaching on this woman, because it has had catastrophic ramifications in the church as it pertains to women and sexual assault. And in our little corner of podcast land, today we say enough.
Yes.
Bathsheba was not complicit in this abuse. She did not participate in it willingly. She was taken.
She was not asking for it.
She was not seducing him. She was not in any way, shape, or form to blame for what happened to her. And God's word confirms it. The blame is taken off of her in our little sphere as much as we can possibly help it today. And the same goes for you. If you have been sexually assaulted, abused, raped in any way, the blame in Jesus' name, the guilt in Jesus' name needs to be taken off of you today. You are valuable. You are loved. God has such a plan for you. He has a purpose for you. And you are on his mind. He will remember you. He will not forget you. He has not taken his eye off of you for a moment, and he will restore you.
Amen.
To the joy of your salvation.
Amen.
In Jesus' name. All right, we love you, sisters. Sisters with Swords is produced and edited by Holly Knight. Original music by the Minister of Funk and Husband of the Year, Bradley Knight. Artwork by Holly Knight. And dinner tonight will also be provided by Holly Knight. Please subscribe and share this podcast with your friends, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Sisters with Swords. We're cheering you on, sister. Go wield your sword.